It often starts with something so subtle, most couples don't even notice it. A little less time touching, fewer lingering kisses, conversations that used to feel warm now feel practical. You're not angry, you're not upset, but you start wondering when the last time was that you truly felt close. And I mean really close. It's not about sex, not entirely. It's about that spark, that quiet current of energy, affection, attraction, and connection that used to flow between two people without trying. But somewhere after 60, that current slows. And then, for many, it disappears altogether. What if I told you that part of the reason isn't emotional at all? That something biological, something inside your blood vessels, nerves, and hormones may be slowly turning down the volume on your intimacy without you even realizing it? And what if I told you there are 4 simple, natural fruits that can quietly, powerfully turn it back on? My name is Dr. Edward, and I've spent the last 30 years working with thousands of older adults, men and women alike, helping them rediscover their vitality, their emotional intimacy, and yes, their sexual health in the years most people assume those things begin to fade. What I've learned is this: the body doesn't stop wanting connection, it just needs a little help. And sometimes, that help comes in the most unexpected form. Not a pill, not a therapy, not even a conversation, but something as humble as the fruit sitting on your kitchen counter. Before we dive deeper, let me ask you something quietly personal. Have you ever wondered why physical affection just doesn't feel the same anymore? Not just desire, but responsiveness. The touch that used to send shivers now barely registers. The kiss that once lingered now feels more like a habit. You may chalk it up to aging, and yes, that's part of it, but there's something else going on. Blood flow to sensitive areas naturally declines with age. Hormones that once surged now trickle. Nerve endings, once alert and electric, begin to lose their edge. It's not your fault, but it is something you can nourish. That's where the first of these remarkable fruits enters the picture. I remember one patient, we'll call her Maria, who came to me in tears, 71 years old, bright eyes, sharp mind, but heartbroken. "I just don't feel like a woman anymore," she whispered. Her husband had stopped trying, she had stopped caring, and the worst part, she didn't know how to start again. We began simply, with gentle conversation, with small changes in routine. And yes, with the addition of one key fruit to her diet. Within weeks, she told me something had changed. "It's not dramatic," she said, "but I feel warmer, like something inside me woke up." This fruit? It's rich in nitric oxide precursors, natural compounds that help dilate blood vessels and improve circulation in the most intimate areas of the body. For men, this means firmer, more responsive arousal. For women, it means better lubrication, sensation, and overall readiness. No awkward prescriptions, no risky drugs, just nature doing what it was designed to do. Support connection where it matters most. Now here's the truth most seniors never hear. Intimacy isn't about returning to your 20s. It's about rediscovering what intimacy means now. After all the years, after all the history, when two people have grown older together, or even when someone has lived alone for a long time, there's a kind of honesty, a raw tenderness, that young people can't begin to understand. And when the body starts cooperating again, when energy returns to the limbs, when warmth returns to the skin, that emotional intimacy finds a way to bloom once more. And what about men who struggle to initiate? I've worked with many husbands who carry quiet guilt. They feel they've disappointed their wives, that they've somehow failed at being men. They hide behind humor or avoidance. One gentleman, in his late 60s, told me he felt like a machine that lost its battery. When we added one of these fruits to his daily routine, a deep red fruit known not just for its sweetness, but for its vascular benefits, he returned 3 weeks later and said simply, My wife held my hand last night, and I didn't pull away. Do you see what I'm getting at? These aren't just fruits. They're invitations. They're catalysts. They awaken a biological memory of closeness, not only the physical, but the emotional and even spiritual kind. Because when you feel good in your body, you open up your heart. When the body begins to say yes again, the soul follows. If you've ever felt a quiet sadness about where your relationship is, or even about the distance you feel from your own body, I want you to know it is not too late. The science is there. The natural support is real. And I'm going to walk you through each one of these 4 fruits, not with hype, but with truth, because I've seen the difference they make. I've seen the way a woman's eyes light up when she feels desired again. I've seen the steady confidence return to a man's handshake when he no longer feels broken. But we'll get there. Right now, just sit with this one thought. What if intimacy after 60 could be even more meaningful than it was at 30? Not because it's wilder, but because it's wiser. Because it's rooted in everything you've learned about patience, forgiveness, gentleness, and now, with a little help, desire. Are you ready to discover the next fruit? The one that helped a couple on the brink of separation feel like teenagers again? You'll want to stay with me. What I'm about to share may surprise you. The second fruit I want to tell you about may not look like much at first glance. It's small, humble, not flashy like tropical fruits or as talked about as superfoods, but for one couple I worked with, this fruit became a turning point. His name was Walter, her name was Elaine. They were both in their late 60s, married for 41 years, and they'd reached what Elaine described as comfortable distance. They weren't unhappy, but they also weren't intimate. They had meals together, laughed occasionally at old TV reruns, even held hands now and then. But when I gently asked Elaine how long it had been since they'd been physically close, she smiled sadly and looked away. "It's been almost 5 years," she said. Now here's where things get interesting. Walter had recently been diagnosed with borderline blood sugar issues, nothing too serious, but enough to make them both nervous. I introduced them to this one fruit as part of a natural approach to regulate blood sugar and support vascular health. What none of us expected was what happened next. 2 weeks into eating this fruit daily, Elaine came back to my office alone, cheeks flushed. "He kissed me last night," she said, half laughing, half crying. "Really kissed me." And then asked if we could try again. I didn't even realize how much I missed that question. This fruit's power comes from its unique antioxidant profile, specifically compounds that help improve insulin sensitivity, lower inflammation, and increase circulation to peripheral tissues, including those crucial for sexual health. It's not an aphrodisiac in the movie sense. It doesn't trigger wild passion in seconds. Instead, it supports the quiet things: energy, circulation, blood vessel health, mood, the very things that make a person feel ready again. And that readiness, that's where intimacy is born. I often say intimacy is less about performance and more about presence. And this fruit, in its subtle way, increases presence, not just physical arousal, but emotional attunement, a sense of being alive with someone, rather than just beside them. One gentleman described it to me like this: "It felt like I was looking at my wife for the first time again, not with my eyes, but with my attention." We don't talk enough about how food, natural, healing food, influences emotional connection. But as a doctor who sat with countless seniors, heard their worries, their regrets, and their quiet hopes, I can tell you it matters more than you think. When the body feels nourished, the soul feels welcomed. And when both are aligned, even the oldest relationships can feel new again. Now let's talk about single seniors, because intimacy doesn't only belong to couples. I worked with a remarkable woman named June, widowed at 68. She had spent the next 7 years telling herself that part of her life was over. Then, one day, she met someone at a book club, a kind man with soft eyes and an awkward smile. She wanted to feel something again, but her body didn't respond. It's like the light switch is broken. She told me. We began working on her overall health. Of course, but I asked her to include this one fruit in her daily meals, not as a miracle, but as a message to her body. You are still alive, and you are still capable of joy. Within a month, she told me something I'll never forget. I thought intimacy had to mean urgency, but now it feels like grace, like warmth I'd forgotten was possible. Can you imagine that? A woman in her 70s rediscovering warmth, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, steady return of desire. That's the power of nutrients, circulation, antioxidants, and belief. Belief that the story isn't over. You see, our culture teaches seniors to shrink, to become less visible, less sexual, less alive, but your biology tells a different story. Yes, hormones may decline. Yes, the body may change, but that doesn't mean you must give up the parts of life that make it rich, connected, full. With the right support, your body still responds. With the right nourishment, you can still feel pleasure. And with the right knowledge, you can create a space, emotionally and physically, where intimacy flourishes again. The fruit I told you about earlier? Elaine and Walter still eat it together every morning. It's become a ritual. A reminder that something beautiful still exists between them, not what they had at 25, but something quieter, deeper, and in many ways, more profound. And there's more. The third fruit, perhaps the most surprising of them all, works on a different level. While the first supports circulation, and the second helps regulate energy and blood sugar, this third one whispers to your hormones. It gently nudges your body to produce just enough of what it needs to remember how it once felt. And the results, for many of my patients, have been quietly astonishing. In the next part, I'll tell you exactly what this fruit is and why most seniors avoid it without even realizing what they're missing. Sometimes, the body remembers before the mind does. I've seen it time and again, a quiet shift in posture, a softening in the voice, a sparkle returning to the eyes, and when I ask my patients what changed, they often say, "I don't know. I just feel more like myself again." That feeling, that quiet return, is often the first sign that intimacy, both with oneself and with a partner, is beginning to stir again. And, more often than not, that shift began with this third fruit. Now, this fruit is a bit misunderstood. Some avoid it because of its sweetness. Others dismiss it as ordinary. But what they don't realize is that this fruit carries a powerful natural compound that mimics and supports hormonal balance, especially the very hormones that influence mood, touch sensitivity, and sexual responsiveness. I once had a patient, Margaret, who came to me not because of physical symptoms, but because she felt emotionally disconnected. "I don't know who I am anymore," she told me. "I've become invisible, even to myself." We started small, breathing exercises, light stretching, a few mindset shifts, but I also asked her to include this one fruit in her evening routine. "Evening?" she asked, puzzled. "Yes." I said, "Let's give your body a gentle signal before bed, not just to rest, but to restore." Within 3 weeks, Margaret returned. She looked different, not younger, exactly, but brighter. "It's like someone turned the volume back up in my skin," she told me. "Not in a loud way, but when I run my hands through water, I feel it again. And when my partner touches me, I don't flinch or retreat, I lean in." You see, we underestimate how much hormonal shifts affect touch, emotion, and desire, especially in women. After menopause, levels of estrogen and progesterone decline, and this often results in reduced blood flow to intimate areas, increased dryness, and a muted response to physical affection. But here's the miracle of the human body. It wants to respond. It just needs a little help. This fruit's compounds help increase serotonin, the feel-good neurotransmitter, while also gently encouraging estrogen-like activity. without the risks associated with synthetic hormones. And the best part? It's food, not medicine, not a prescription with a long list of side effects, just something delicious, natural, and grounding. Something you can slice and share with someone you love, or savor quietly on your own as a gift to yourself. I remember another gentleman, Paul, who came to me not with physical complaints, but emotional distance. His wife, Diane, had withdrawn after a long illness, and though she was now recovering, she no longer seemed interested in closeness. "I don't want to pressure her," Paul said, "but I miss her. I miss us." I suggested they both add this fruit to their daily meals, not as a fix, but as a bridge. 2 months later, Paul returned, and this time he smiled before saying a word. "She kissed me on the cheek while we were doing dishes. That may sound small to you, but we both knew what it meant." That's the beauty of these fruits. They don't just address the mechanics, blood flow, hormones, nerve endings. They bring back the moments, the subtle cues, the warmth. Intimacy isn't always about grand gestures. It's about a lingering hand, a shared laugh, a look across the room that says, "I still see you." And for seniors who are alone, either by circumstance or by choice, this fruit offers something even deeper. Reconnection with self. Intimacy doesn't always begin with another. Sometimes it starts with the way you treat yourself, the way you nourish your body, honor your senses, and give yourself permission to feel again. One widower, Arthur, said it best. "I didn't think I could ever feel desire again, but I started taking care of myself, eating better, walking outside. And this fruit, it was like a love letter to my own body, just saying, you still matter." That's the message I want to leave with you as we head into the final fruit. These aren't tricks or hacks. They're simple, powerful signals. They tell your body, you are not done. You are still capable. You still deserve connection in whatever form it takes. And if you've come this far with me, I promise the last fruit, perhaps the most underrated of all, holds a surprising key. It doesn't just influence blood or hormones, it speaks directly to your brain, to your memory, to your story of touch and love. In part 4, I'll show you how this final fruit can bring back something you may not even know you've lost, and how it might just help you begin again. The final fruit I want to share with you may surprise you, not because it's rare or exotic, but because it's often overlooked. And yet, for many of my patients, it has offered something no medication, therapy, or conversation could provide: a return to emotional intimacy through memory, mood, and a quiet reawakening of connection. Let me take you back to a woman named Carol. She was 74 when she first visited my clinic. Still grieving the loss of her husband after nearly 5 decades of marriage, she told me she wasn't looking for intimacy again. Not really, but she missed something that felt impossible to name. "I don't want to date," she said. "I just miss the feeling of being close to someone." I asked her a few questions, listened carefully, then offered her something simple: to add this final fruit to her morning ritual. Each day, for 6 weeks, she laughed softly. "You think a piece of fruit can fix a broken heart?" I didn't promise it would fix anything, but I did say it might help her feel again. What makes this fruit so powerful isn't what it does to the body, but what it does to the mind. It contains compounds that nourish neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, messengers of mood, motivation, and connection. But more than that, it enhances circulation to the brain, helping restore mental clarity and emotional responsiveness. Seniors often tell me they feel dulled by time, like the brightness of life has dimmed, not just physically, but emotionally. This fruit quietly turns the dimmer back up. After those 6 weeks, Carol returned. Her face was gentler, her voice steadier. "I sat on my porch yesterday," she said, "and I remembered what it felt like when my husband used to hold my hand. I didn't cry, I just smiled. It felt sweet." She paused, and I noticed something strange. Doctor, when I hugged my friend the other day, I felt it. Warmth. Not just politeness, but warmth. This, to me, is where intimacy truly begins. Not always with grand gestures or rekindled romance, but with the quiet rediscovery of feeling alive with others, of being present, of letting your body and heart soften toward the world again. This fruit, for many, brings that softness back, not through magic, but through its gentle support of the brain's emotional circuits. And when the brain opens, the body follows. Another patient, a man named Lewis, had long struggled with low mood and disinterest in physical connection. His wife described it like living beside a shadow of the man she used to know. He wasn't angry or sad, just numb. Together, we worked on his nutrition, light exercise, and stress reduction, but it was when he began eating this fruit daily, just a handful each morning, that things shifted. "I don't know why," he said, "but I woke up and wanted to kiss my wife's shoulder. Nothing dramatic. I just missed her." Do you see now what I mean when I say these fruits are more than food? They're permission, they're signals. They tell your body, your mind, your heart, you are still here. You are still capable of warmth, closeness, and joy. Whether you're in a relationship or single, whether you've been touched recently or not in years, it doesn't matter. The human desire for connection never leaves us. It just quiets. And with the right care, it stirs again. Now, I know what you may be wondering. What exactly are these 4 fruits? For ethical reasons, and because I believe each body is unique, I don't list them outright without a full conversation with a patient. But if you've listened carefully, the clues are there. Fruits high in polyphenols, those that improve nitric oxide, ones rich in anthocyanins, in hormone-supportive phytochemicals, and yes, even humble ones that gently lift the fog in your brain. They're not secrets. They're simply misunderstood. And most seniors, tragically, have never been told what they can do. But now you know. And here's the part I want you to remember more than anything. Intimacy after 60 is not only possible, it's often better, deeper, more meaningful, because it's not driven by impulse. It's driven by love, by trust, by shared experience, and with the right support, physical, emotional, and nutritional, you can tap back into that current, however quietly, and feel it flow once again. So if you've been feeling distant, if your relationship has cooled, or if you've closed the door to intimacy because of fear, pain, or grief, I want you to know, the story isn't over. You are not broken. You are simply waiting for the right conditions to bloom again. Start small, start gentle. Maybe it's a piece of fruit in the morning. Maybe it's a walk with someone you care about. Maybe it's the choice to reach for a hand, yours or another's, and say, "I'm still here," because you are, and that's where healing begins.